I'm Nick Serecchia. Recently, Canva was valued at $40 billion after another fundraising round of $200 million. But Canva's probably one of the least smooth processes that businesses that have grown that quickly have seen. Really, their story is an excellent example of just how challenging starting a business and especially getting initial traction can be. And so over the course of this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly what they did to overcome those challenges, what led them to where they are now, and how you can apply some of the concepts they use towards your own business and your own life. Canva was initially founded in Sydney, Australia in 2013 by Melanie Perkins and Cliff Obrecht, but it actually goes back to 2007. So back in 2007, Melanie was tutoring different students on online design tools. So Photoshop, Adobe, whatever was out at the time, she would walk them through and teach them how to use. Through this process, she actually realized, though, that it was extremely challenging to not just use them, but also teach them. So in 2013, she decided to try to make something better. She started on the niche of some sort of software tool that would enable schools and students at schools to better create yearbooks. The original name of this yearbook software was called Fusion Books. It was essentially trying to merge all of those different tools into one centralized tool, where before you'd have to edit the images in one tool, you'd have to merge them all in another. It was just so decentralized. She was essentially after just a one-stop shop for designing and creating cool things. So while she was working on kind of what this would look like, Obrecht was cold calling tons of different schools to try this out. And when schools would ask to talk to their manager, he would usually just lower his voice and pretend to be the manager in order to, actually get them to take him seriously. Eventually they managed to get some traction, get some use, and eventually hit 400 total schools using it, with schools all the way out in France when they're based in Australia. This was around the time when they hit their first funding wall, because now they've actually proven their concept and they wanted to grow this into something more versatile. But getting a meeting, let alone funding, was extremely challenging. Her big break came in 2011 when a massive venture capitalist named Bill Tai was coming to her area for basically a kitesurfing conference. He was also hosting some dinners while I was there that would host some pretty big names and other investors. So she managed to get invited to this, or managed to show up to this, and she would basically ambush all of the attendees with the idea of this canvas chef, where, it was a pizza of different design elements and different tools all merging into one, and she pitched it to everyone, and not a single one was actually interested. But what she did get was she did get a new enthusiasm for kitesurfing. The way this is relevant is all of a sudden now she and Cliff became core figures at these kitesurfing meetings that had potential connections that could potentially invest in her. Through these events, she eventually met Cameron Adams, and he was an ex-person who worked at Google. They managed to persuade him to come aboard as their tech lead, which basically means that now they had somebody who could speak to more of the technology piece than they could already talk about, and that connection actually led them to finally getting investing. They raised $3 million in seed funding in between 2012 and early 2013, which also included a matching grant from the Australian government. After talking and getting rejected by over 100 investors, really putting themselves out there a ton and having a proof of concept, it still took them that long to finally get someone to invest in them. That funding is what started Canva. 6 or 7 months later, August of 2013, they finally launched Canva out to the world. They had a few users and some reviews, and that's pretty much it. What they didn't realize, though, is that they had chosen an opportune time to do what they were doing. All of a sudden, Instagram and Facebook became the core ways to market yourself, and how better to market yourself on these platforms than by having really compelling visuals. Everyone suddenly cared about their online presence a lot more with this transition into online marketing. Their users grew to 50,000 in the first month, and they raised another $3 million by 2014. They grew rapidly once they finally got that traction. In 2017, they finally became profitable and received a $1 billion valuation a year later. Most recently, this is where kind of what I was talking about at the beginning came up, they raised another $200 million and are now valued at $40 billion, the only startups being bigger than them being ByteDance, Stripe, SpaceX, and Klarna. So they are now the 5th biggest startup in the world. The big question now is what led to their success and what can we learn from this? The most obvious is that they focused on the problem rather than the solution. She recognized that this was a need. There was no really great tool, at least as far as she saw, for doing this kind of designing and making it super user-friendly. Additionally, their persistence and creativity in how they got the funding. So again, they got rejected by over 100 different investors, but their creativity in looking at where these investors were hanging around and just becoming a mainstay in those events and realizing they were missing something enough to pick up additional connections through their tech lead really led them to finally getting traction when they otherwise wouldn't have. Finally, the other big thing that really made this successful was their ease of use, where It was so approachable. Drag and drop wasn't quite the norm, and making it so that anyone can create really high quality presentations, images, marketing materials was just so broad and useful. They invested so much time and resources towards creating a really powerful and comprehensive template library that it's kind of hard to mess things up. They have over 800,000 templates that range from slide decks to financial documents to pitch decks. Like, anything is on there for a template that you could want to use, so you don't need to start from scratch, which makes it a lot more approachable. They started niche to prove the concept and then gradually broadened out once they knew that this was feasible from a software side. Another thing they used to acquire users that helped a lot that you might be able to use for your business is offering value first. So they had a freemium model, which is where they let people try it for free and then upgrade it if they find that they want more. This can be used for your career, for your own business. Offering some sort of value up front for free that allows people to see whether or not it's worth investing longer term, because it removes the risk from their part, it makes them already like you, and providing value first before expecting payment is always the best way to do business. A great example of this is sampling food from the grocery store. How much more likely are you to buy a new, say, cracker if you were to get some free sample with some spread cheese or something, than if you just saw it on the shelf and were like, oh, interesting box, I guess I'll buy it. Obviously way more likely, because you've gotten to try it, you've gotten to see if it's something you like and compare it to what you already know. So free sampling is hugely useful. If you can free sample in your business, if you can give a free trial, any sort of try it for free that leads into a payment eventually or a customer eventually is a great way to go. They're still facing numerous challenges that growing a business comes with. For example, they're still struggling to get more into enterprises, so becoming a core mainstay of the bigger businesses as their design tool. Another example is, for a while, their core coding for the software was built in such a way that only up to 5 engineers could work on it at a time, and they only just recently revised it so that more people can work on it. So they finally made it a little bit more scalable in that respect. Ultimately, Canva went from a simple problem one woman had with using different tools to a multi-billion-dollar company in less than a decade. If there are any 3 points to highlight from this entire story and everything I've talked about, it's focus on the problem, not necessarily the solution, because the solution you might be thinking of might not address the problem that your customers are actually facing. Offer value for free before expecting payment at all, and make whatever you're doing accessible to people so that anyone can use it, or at least your target demographic can use it readily, because if your users can't actually utilize what you're creating for them, no matter how great it is, it's not going to get very far. If you enjoyed this video, remember to like, subscribe, and comment below on your thoughts on Canva. I think it's a pretty cool company, and the speed at which they scaled has been really, really cool to watch. See you next video.